It's okay. You can hear me fine.
Yeah, all good.
Great. Awesome. So we're live. Ben Lipschitz, thanks for joining me.
Hi, thank you.
It has been, I think we've had 3 attempts at doing doing this podcast.
I know.
And I'm so excited to finally get to talk to you. It's you and your business model fascinate me. And I was so excited when the first time that we tried to set this up, we were going to do this in person when we were in Sydney for Map It Forward, but that fell through because I was losing my voice pre-event, and then lost my voice post-event. And then this is the 3rd attempt. So I'm glad we're finally there. Thanks again for doing this.
Oh, of course, yeah. Glad you got your voice back as well.
Yeah, me too. Trust me. Hey, so you're the CEO of Foodbyus.
Yeah, I'm the MD. Yeah.
And firstly, thank you so much for sponsoring the Map It Forward event in Sydney. Let me just tell you, the food that your suppliers provided for the breakfast and the afternoon tea was outstanding.
Good. That's what we like to hear.
Lots of really happy people. Now, tell us about Foodbyus, because the business model isn't what it started out to be, is it?
Yeah, I mean, there's some evolution in terms of where we got to where we are today, but I mean, essentially what we are is the one-stop shop for restaurants and cafes to order from all of their different suppliers. And I think, the experience today, if you're a restaurant or a cafe, is you've got somewhere between 10 and 15 suppliers. This one for fruit, this one for meat, this one for dairy. So that's 10 or 15 different emails or phone calls or texts or whatever it is you got to do every day. And if you miss cutoff, you're not going to get your food for the next day. So that's a bit of an absolute nightmare. And then, of course, the food comes. You got to check it all, and you got to pay 10 or 15 different people, invoices and all that. So that's a bit of a hassle. So I guess what we do is we come in the middle and say, right, one-stop shop, one platform. Here are over 150 of Sydney's best suppliers for you. Just do one order, we'll take care of the rest. So we take the money, we fling it off to the suppliers, and then everything just goes from there.
And it just shows up.
Just shows up. Yeah, that's it. In many cases, what we're able to do is actually have like a Uber style, like GPS tracking of the actual delivery. So, at the moment, you don't really know, A, if it's going to show up, and B, like where it is at that point in time. So we kind of get rid of all of that. And it's kind of ironic in a way, because a lot of these restaurants themselves have something like Uber Eats or Deliveroo, which they are using to get business in. And so their customers, people like you and me, have this great ordering experience where we can hop online and we can order and we can, track the little driver and see when the stuff comes over. But those restaurants themselves, in terms of how they run their business and how they order from their suppliers, they don't have anything like that, or they haven't until now. So they're still phoning in and they're still texting and faxing and emailing to get their supplies. So we're sort of shifting things, one level up the supply chain. They love it. It's like, hasn't innovated like this in a while, I think, in this industry. That's the impression I get. So yeah.
We certainly don't have anything like that here in the US. Not in California that I know of. No doubt people are going to watch this episode and everyone's going to be contacting their developer friends saying, oh my God, there's this amazing idea.
Absolutely.
You should see some traffic headed your way with your website for people trying to rip off what you're doing.
Yeah, or work with us to do it.
Hey,
it could also happen.
That's always an opportunity. Is that something that you're open to?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we really only have been doing this for about a year and a half. And my business partner was involved in a business called Menulog, which was allowing
we've got Menulog here.
Yeah, so I guess they had to be like a Grubhub or DoorDash or something like that. And so we kind of have that experience, and we built that into a lot of what we're doing here. But we've only been going for a year. So it might seem like we're sort of, you got 150 suppliers and 500 venues, and you're ordering from those suppliers, and there's a lot of interaction in this marketplace, but it's just in Sydney. We've not even gone into Melbourne or any of the other cities in Australia. And I think absolutely, you know, we have to be open to seeing where this goes both locally and internationally.
Yeah.
It'd be so cool to go over there and see how it works, you know, in America, and where the supply comes from, and whether it's really fragmented like it is here in Australia, where there's just literally thousands of different profiteers, or maybe there it's a bit more concentrated and you've got some bigger players. I honestly don't know. So maybe a fact-finding mission there would be good.
Yeah, well, listen, I know a bunch of people over here that are looking to invest in a whole bunch of projects, so I might put you in contact with them. And I mean, there's so many developers over here that are wanting to jump on the tech startup, and what's the next Uber, and what's the next, you know, Uber Eats, etc., etc. This would be a great opportunity. It didn't start off this way though, did it?
No. So the original idea was homemade food. So Lee could make a cake, and, you know, maybe a few cakes, and sell it to her neighbors. And so we sort of had this idea that people are doing the sharing economy for accommodation with Airbnb, and they're doing the sharing economy with you know, driving for Uber, obviously. Why is no one doing it for food? And we sort of fleshed out the idea, and we got this website up and running. And we actually had quite a few thousand what we call makers, like homemakers doing food, really authentic stuff, like people from different cultural backgrounds making food from where they're originally from.
Sounds
and people
amazing.
with different dietary restrictions making like the best vegan food because they've been vegan for like their whole life. And it was just really, really grassroots, really communal, really exciting. And the main problem we thought we'd have, and we went to a lot of effort to kind of pre-fix and pre-solve this problem, was food poisoning. So we would check the food, and we got everyone's ID, and we made sure that all of the kitchens were inspected, and it was really, really good. In tens of thousands of orders, we had 0 instances of
that's awesome
food poisoning. And in fact, the average review was 4.82 out of 5 across the whole website.
No way.
Everyone reviewing the food was loving it. There was no problem on the buy side, except, you know, you've got a day job, Lee, you know, you've got probably many jobs that you're doing. So the idea of making a cake or 2 a week as a supplier is probably quite cool. And, you know, you make a bit of extra money. We started getting volume to the point where the suppliers, who were doctors or teachers or lawyers or whatever they were during their day job, were saying, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, you're pushing
this wasn't meant to turn into a business.
Yeah, and I guess this is like the naivety of an entrepreneur. And then we just assumed if we're giving these suppliers volume, they're just all going to want to quit their day job, of course, and they're all going to want to become, you know, successful.
One would assume.
Well, yeah, there's definitely, you know, naivety. We didn't really think volume would be a problem for the suppliers, but it very quickly became a problem. And so we gave the suppliers this ability to decline an order if they wanted, thinking, you know, they'll use that function if they're sick or they're on holidays or whatever, except the decline rate was just going up and up and up, and for no other reason than they were saying, look, I'm at capacity this week. And we, you know, we had all the data, and we'd go in and we'd look and we'd say, well, you've only made like 20, 30 cakes this week. And they're like, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of cakes. Like, I'm done for the week. I don't want to do this. And so you can imagine, as a buyer, you know, let's just say you're Googling, you find an AdWord at the top that says homemade food. You're like, what the hell is this? This sounds really crazy. This sounds really dodgy. You click on the ad, you see all the reviews, you finally add something to your cart. It's a local neighborhood sort of baker. You order this delicious cake, and you get a message back from the website saying, thanks, we've taken your money. Let's just wait for the pending order to be confirmed by the supplier, if that's okay. And moments later, you get a decline. You know, sorry, Lee doesn't want to make your cake. And so that was just the worst ever user experience. And so the numbers kept kind of going up and then plateauing, and then going up a bit more and plateauing. And we said, we can't do this. This is not scalable. You know, how are we going to build this business if we've got to go and find, I think, 20,000 bakers each making, you know, 5-10 cakes a week? And that's at the same time we were getting calls from cafes saying, you're in the wrong business. You're in the wrong business model. You should be selling to us. And again, naivety was, but you're a cafe, don't you make all your own food? Don't you sort of make everything in-house? And they're like, you have no idea. Like, we buy, aside from, you know, fresh ingredients like fruit and veg and dairy and all that, we actually buy in a lot of cakes. We buy in a lot of pre-made stuff. We don't have a full kitchen here. we want access to suppliers, but not your homemakers, because we buy volume and we expect volume. We want access to like best Sydney producers that you can find. So we're like, okay, we kind of weren't really sure.
Yeah.
So the first few people that rang, we said, well, we're not really a wholesale network. We're for consumers. We're P2P. We're trying to be the new Airbnb. Thanks, but thanks, but no thanks. And after about the 10th call from the 10th cafe, and my whole customer service team saying, hey, can we please have a templated response for all of these wholesale inquiries coming in, because we just, we're getting so many of them. What do we actually tell these people? And then I kind of thought, okay, I don't want to ignore it, and I keep plateauing on the person side. So what we did is we opened up like a private part of the website with no recognition from Google. Like we kind of hid it from all of the crawlers out there. We said, cool, this is a secret part of the Foodbyus website specifically for wholesale. And I think we had like 3 or 4 suppliers on there making, I think, donuts and bagels and like very, very basic stuff. And a few cafes found it because we sent a few emails out, just like a few lists that we had. And as I said, we already had a few inbound inquiries. So we finally emailed those people back and said, hey, if you really want to buy wholesale, here's a secret part of the website. And those orders started coming in. I think our average order value for customers, like consumers, was $50. And these orders were coming in, and the average order value was like $150 every time. Wow. So it's immediate 3 times our average order value. And guess what? They ordered, and then the next week or even the next day, they ordered again. And then the next week or the next day, they ordered again and again.
It's a sustainable model by that point.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, these people order more, 3 times more. They order more frequently. They've been begging for the platform, and I've got 3 or 4 suppliers. Well, what if I had 10? What if I had 100? And so we started to shift, but I still wasn't convinced. I still kind of, I guess, emotionally invested in the idea of the Airbnb for food. But I think after about 4 or 5 months of doing it on the sly and in the background, we just said, right, we're done. We're done with P2P. Like we're done with Lee making cakes.
Completely done. You killed that part of the website.
Not within 4 months. Within 4 months, we made the decision to do it, and then I think within another 3 months of that, we basically started just shifting the whole website. Like what does a B2B only platform look like? What is the difference between a cafe and a consumer? What kind of features do they want? For example, like a cafe wants to be invoiced a little differently. GST and tax becomes a bit more of a factor for them. Nothing too hard, to be honest, but we just started shifting the website. And I mean, now, we're just B2B. Like we actually have no consumers allowed. If you come to our website as a consumer and you try and log in without the right credentials proving that you're a business and that you are legitimately in food services and all these things that we check, we just tell you, sorry.
What was the response to that? How did the consumers respond to their righteous home cooking being taken away from them?
It's funny, the consumers, I think, understood, and to be honest, like one learning I think from that shift in our business model, pivot as they call it.
I'm a big fan of the pivot.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny. It's such a standard startup story. Like, oh, we wanted to go into payments, and we ended up in whatever, some other thing. Completely like that. We wanted homemade food. We ended up a B2B platform. But the thing about consumers is they're pretty fickle.
Yeah.
And so, when you're trying to build a marketplace, that's the new business model of the age, or has been for the last few years. It's two-sided marketplace. How do you build up all the suppliers and how do you build up all the buyers? And when you hit that volume, you've got this great, almost like a monopoly. Like you've got Airbnbs and Ubers of the world, and they're really top of their game. And the next one's down like a rung down, like quite quite level down. You know what I mean? It's almost like that winner takes all model or winner takes most model. But you need that huge upfront investment.
Yeah.
And so a lot of what you're looking at in terms of consumers is, are they sticky? Like, are they going to keep coming back? And we found, at least with food, you know, you can eat out, you can cook at home, you've got Deliveroo or Uber Eats if you want that restaurant option. There's Hello Fresh and Marley Spoon if you want the food delivered to you and then you cook it at home. And then somewhere in that mix is Foodbyus. And so to answer your question, you know, consumers weren't super fussed. I guess they were disappointed, and there were a couple of really sticky users who were like, oh, I really liked using this. You know, I fed my family using authentic homemade food from Foodbyus. The suppliers were the most upset. The people who had used us as a channel, not for that extra income. You know what? It was for extra income, but the content of what they were saying to us in terms of, hey, we're really upset that you've shifted your business model, is I just liked cooking. I liked the idea of, you know, servicing people in my local community. It was a really like grassroots communal vibe, and the name was Foodbyus, and it was a very you know, a bit of a movement, I guess.
And the connectedness that comes from something 100%. Like that, right? I think 100%. If I'm seeing anything with regards to business models at the moment, whether it being coffee or any other sector, it's that when there's this idea of connectedness and community around, and I don't like using that word when it comes to the coffee industry, this word of community, only because it's so overused. But this idea of connectedness, when it's at the core of what you're doing in your business, it seems to be the thing that the general public and our consumers are so hungry for these days, because they're so isolated from the rest of the world, whether it's self-isolation or imposed on us because of the work that we do, or as a result of depression or some sort of mental illness or whatever. A model like that you were speaking about all of a sudden is like, oh, well, I know how to cook a cake, and I might be able to talk to 3 people if I sell 3 cakes this week.
Totally. And I think that it particularly applies to food. You know, you may get that nice vibe by letting people stay in your house, or by driving local people around, you know, in terms of those other business models. But there was something about making homemade food and knowing that someone else is eating because you've done it. And there's money behind it and all of that. But we were
but so much
enabling
more.
These people to, a lot of them they sort of had, I guess, fantasies at one time or the other of starting their own food business, and we gave them that platform for very little effort. They could take a listing, they could list their products. You know, we had a free photography service, so they'd have this great looking store within Foodbyus.
Wow.
And they were getting all this business. So they were more, I guess, upset that we shifted, and they kind of felt like, well, you're just going with where the volumes are and where the businesses are, and that's not kind of what you set out to do. But the reality is we couldn't. These were also the same people who were declining orders week on week on week. So it just is what it is. There's nothing you can do. We were completely not sustainable in a way that we were growing on the demand side, where the suppliers were actually meeting that demand. They just weren't. They were pushing back. So that's what it became.
How do you as an entrepreneur, how did you get to be in the position that you are, whereby you knew that you wanted to be an entrepreneur and you wanted to move into this space?
Going back in time a bit, I guess, I studied law, and I didn't want to be a lawyer. I went to do, they call it a summer clerkship. It's like an internship. So it's a very coveted thing that every law student wants a clerkship, basically. Anyway, so I worked really hard, and I managed to get one, and it was a great law firm and all that. And I got there, and so it was a 3-month summer thing, and I just thought, no way. Like, I'm not invested in this. And unfortunately, you do it sort of a year before you finish you had that last year. Okay, like what I've just done for 3 months is kind of like one of the major goals that I guess I've had throughout the degree, and I did not enjoy it. So I really don't know.
So this is the best it's going to get, and I hate it.
Yeah, and I should also say, like, you can do lots of things with the law degree, and it's absolutely not just about going and getting a clerkship. But certainly, if you're commercial and if you see yourself in the business side of law, which was me, that was kind of that for me at least, that was the top within that profession for my commercial interests. And I didn't enjoy it. So I ended up starting like a shoe company of all things.
Okay.
So I finished university, and what they did, this law firm was really great. They said, if you want, you can kind of defer your start date as a graduate. So I said, okay, I'm going to take a year off and I'm going to travel the world. And I actually did have some savings saved up for that. But I had this idea that women wear high heels. I was out with some friends, and one of them was complaining about her high heels. And she ended up walking barefoot that night. And it became this whole discussion about why don't you have like a folding Havaiana, like a folding flip-flop for your handbag. And she said, well, it doesn't fit, my handbag's one of these clutches, and so there's nothing that fits in there. Anyway, started this shoe company, which was called Lipschitz, and it was this folding shoe idea. And I thought, I'll give it a shot for a year. I'm not going to travel because I kind of need to scratch this itch now and see if I want to do my own business. And if I hate it, I've got this fallback. And then, of course, 1 year turned into 5. So I ended up doing that for 5 years and building it. And we got to 16 countries of distribution. We were selling hundreds of thousands of these folding flip-flop things. And we ended up actually selling that business, which was really good.
Awesome.
And that kind of, we didn't sell it for insane amounts of money, but it was good. It was good to say, okay, I had an idea. I worked at it. I made an insane amount of mistakes, like just mistake after mistake after mistake, and then eventually kind of built it up and then said, all right, and we sold it. So I was like, all right, I can do this. Like this is a good
I've been through the cycle once.
Kind of, yeah, exactly. And went to work in a new startup after that, which was like I'd always felt working with shoes and that I was trying to innovate in an industry that wasn't really open to innovation at that time, at least not in the way that I was trying to do it. So it was this folding shoe. It was patented. It had all these unique angles and materials, and it was really, really like cool and cutting edge. But it was shoes. Like no one was really. I didn't feel like I was sort of getting anywhere with the idea that it was an innovative idea. That it was much more about volume and production and your contacts with the factories and things that I wasn't really experienced with. And I was like, I want to go in an industry where they're innovating. I want my creativity and my ideas to come.
Yeah, man. Nothing wrong with
that. Yeah. And so technology, I was like, cool. Like that seems, for my day and age, this is where the innovation's at. And I just joined a tech startup. It was like a data analytics company. And that's where I met my current business partner. So we were both working on that together. And he had that menu log background. And I sort of had this manufacturing shoe, like very, practical, making real things and selling them and dealing with all of that stuff. So it's a good combination because I have no idea about technology. I can't code. Very much like marketing and ops and building a team and all of that stuff. And within this data analytics company, we both sort of, became friends and then became sort of business partners and then said, right, like, at a point in time, we had this idea for Foodbyus and we ended up leaving actually. So we were in that company for about 1.5 years together. So it was around 2015. And then in 2016, we started Foodbyus. So it's a bit of a journey, I guess. And I just kind of felt like I went from one business to the next, and now we've been doing this for 2 years or something like that. So yeah, or 1 year with the old business model, and 1 year with this new one. So, yeah.
Did you find that the things that you called them failures and mistakes, well, you didn't call them failures, you said mistakes. You made a lot of mistakes. How great are those mistakes as an entrepreneur now?
Yeah.
Isn't it awesome? Like, you look back and you think, how fucking lucky am I that I had the opportunity to make those mistakes, first of all, and I wasn't like that dumb, that I actually learnt from them, and I look back on them now and I've got a whole bunch of knowledge.
Yeah, no, it's so Foodbyus is a team of 20 now, and one of the things I always get from my team is what you're always very relaxed, like you don't seem to stress that much, and I'm like, you don't know how bad it can get. Like, you think a late delivery is bad, like try an entire container of shoes going to your Canadian distributor with the wrong materials because the factory in China just didn't tell you, hey, we're going to swap the material for something cheaper, and now every single one of your like beautiful invention just rips instead of folding. That literally happened.
Oh my goodness.
Then I was like, I don't know, 25 or something, and it was like 1 year into Lipschitz, and had to call this guy in Canada who'd taken a real chance on us and ordered like a container of these shoes. I was like, hey, those shoes, they're all stuffed. Like, I'm sorry, we have to refund you and remake them. And it's a summer shoe, so you literally just missed the year of sales.
How do you handle something like that from the manufacturing perspective? Do the people in China reimburse you, or is it an insurance claim?
No, I mean, we had a lot of negotiating to do because they basically, there's many levels deep with the factories there, and some they've got the concept of a shadow factory. So what you might see when you go and take a tour is actually not the one making the product. That's risk number one. Mm-hmm. They're actually making it somewhere completely different. But risk number two is the factory that you see is making, perhaps they're assembling part of the shoe, but they're not making all of the components. And so that was the thing that got us, is that this factory, which was very good, was making things like the cushioning and the straps, but what they weren't making was the foldable rubber base.
Oh.
It was a composite base of many materials. And so they had given the order to a partner factory to manufacture the sole. And that factory had decided, basically, it wasn't even that factory. I think it was someone down the line in that factory, like many layers deep, said, well, I can save a bit of money if I just substitute material A for material B, which of course made the shoe more brittle and stopped it from folding, and it just tore and snapped. And we were too inexperienced to do chemical testing and actually understand each shoe needed to be tested before it shipped. We just kind of assumed, naively, we'll pay you and you'll make the thing that we paid you for. So in terms of getting the money back and I guess remaking it, the factory that we actually dealt with was quite good, and they had to put pressure down the line. Like, they didn't mean to do that, I guess. It's just that they kind of were also in a bit of a bad position in that someone down the line had given them the wrong thing. So we pushed on our factory. They wanted a long-term relationship with us, and then they went down the line and pushed on their supplier. And I think we ended up having to pay to get it remade, but not all of it. Like, there was a sharing arrangement.
Yeah, wow. So, have you heard much about the manufacturing boom that's going on in Africa?
I haven't. No, I mean, because Australia's so close to China, and also we're talking now like close to 10 years ago. We actually tried to get it made in Australia.
That must have been so expensive.
It was, yeah. So I think so. The shoe retailed for $30. I think we worked out that if we had it made in Australia, the shoe would have had to retail for about 120, and for a flip flop. So we were told by the Aussie manufacturers, just go to China.
It's exorbitant. The wages on their own are exorbitant. They throw everything out when it comes to manufacturing.
Yeah.
Look at the coffee industry. The coffee industry is trying to understand how they can start to become profitable, because they're going and spending $1 million on a fit out. They're spending all this money on a beautiful space, and the price of a coffee goes up 5 cents a year, which is nothing. And the wages in Australia for a barista is about between 25 and 30 bucks an hour. And, you know, on a public holiday, a dishy gets $53 an hour.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean,
it's not that they're not worth it, but
I think, you know, what I learned is that because we had decided from the beginning to make a flip-flop, it had an inherent, in the eyes of the consumer, an inherent ceiling in terms of the value and what we could charge. I couldn't go more than 30 bucks.
No way.
And so I think in the situation you're talking about, you can absolutely make a profit out of a business where you're paying people $53, you know, to wash dishes on the weekend. If from the outset you say, right, that's my cost base, I'm not going to get around it. What do I now need to charge to cover that and then some? And then most importantly, you know, what in the eyes of the consumer are they going to pay? Because I mean, for us, like I said, if we wanted to make in Australia and we put a made in Australia stamp, we could charge $120 and that's a profitable business, except for the fact that
no one would buy it.
Yeah, well, we sort of naively were like, well, we'll ask a few people. We did some research, and you know, how important is it that something's made in Australia? And you know, people would tick 10 out of 10, very, very important. And then the next question would be, would you pay $120 for a made in Australia flip flop? And people would be like, absolutely no. Okay, so it's important to you, but you're not going to pay for it.
Correct.
So, you know,
because what's really important to me is that I have enough money to spend $5 on a soy latte tomorrow. That's what's really important.
Exactly.
But that's the same problem that the coffee industry is facing right now, particularly in places like Australia, because that product has a ceiling as well. A cup of coffee, you can't. If in Australia we're to charge what the actual value that's required to make any money on a cup of coffee, it needs to be about $6 or $7 for the businesses to run profitable. During the Map It Forward workshops, we had an accountant in there, Nadia Lice, and he broke down the cost of a cup of coffee. And for a $4 cup of coffee, paying around about $26 a kilo for coffee, which you know, most places are paying a couple of dollars higher than that a kilo. What do you think? What do you think the margin is on that? What do you think that cafes are making net off that cup of coffee in money?
I think it was something like between 20 and 50 cents or something like that.
A little bit lower. It's 17 cents. I think you were there for that chat.
I saw that. I caught the tail end of it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 17 cents. And so those numbers don't include fit out costs. So when you add to that the fit out costs of a cafe, around about $1 million, between $700 and $1 million in Sydney and Melbourne. Melbourne's even worse, but 17 cents, that's kind of ridiculous. And that's why these cafes are experiencing such a difficult time, because coffee does have a ceiling. You know, as soon as you start saying to someone, and especially in Australia where the coffee drinking culture is so evolved that people are drinking 3 and 4 espresso-based drinks a day and going to their local cafe once on the way to work, once during lunchtime, and then want their afternoon coffee. If you ask them to drop, you know, $6 or $7 a coffee, it's $20 a day that they're spending on coffee, and that's not realistic for most people. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, you absolutely hit on something that we see all the time, which is there's just insane amounts of passion and know-how and just incredible service from a lot of these venues. And then we go and talk to them and we're like, you know, where do you get your food from? What kind of margins are you making? And it starts to kind of pull apart at the seams sometimes, because not everyone has thought about it to the level that you've just described.
Yeah.
And then you kind of go through their food costs, and it's cool and it's heartbreaking, because you realize I can save you all this money, and look, you're actually not getting the right pricing on A, B, and C. And they're quite excited, but they're also kind of semi kicking themselves, because for years now, or however long it's been, you know, they've been paying too much, or they haven't actually worked out what they should be charging given what the costs are. And as you said, there's a lot of other costs sneaking in there, like your fit out, whatever else it is, wages, and all your other overheads. but not everyone thinks about it in those terms. And sometimes it's not why they set out to start that venture. And maybe they were just passionate about coffee, or they had a really cool idea in terms of the kind of venue they wanted to run.
Or a lot of people
and then you go in and say 17 cents, and it's like, oh my God.
Well, I remember when I started in coffee, the big thing going around was that it cost 40 cents to make a cup of coffee. And so, but this was back in the early 2000s. And so, you know, this was coming off the 90s, which was huge for the Australian coffee industry from a profitability perspective. People were raking in money, but they were also using shitty commodity coffee. And there wasn't, you know, we weren't talking about the kinds of wages that we're talking about now, nor were we talking about the kinds of fit outs. Now, though, you know, we're talking about 17 cents is the only 60% of that is taken up by cost of goods and wages. That's it. We're not even including 60% doesn't even come close to the fixed costs. So, you know, we're about to release, well, we're working on releasing the map that we had for cafe owners. We're going to release that as an ebook, and it goes through like how you should look at costing out certain things. And, you know, we want to help you decide not to open a cafe if you shouldn't be opening a cafe.
Yeah.
We want to help you save $1 million rather than
exactly.
then pour that down the toilet. Go and take $1 million and put it on a house. It's a safer bet than opening a coffee shop that you're not going to know how to run.
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing is, in a weird way, even though you're describing such high risk and such a strong business acumen that's required to make these things, like most of them go out of business in the first year or two. There's insane competition at the same time, all the time. And you're not in competition with a broader, you know, citywide or even suburb-wide.
It's the block you're on.
Literally the block. It's the block you're on. That's your competitor. And for everyone that might fall away, there's, you know, another 2 or 3 that might spring up. So you're under that constant pressure, not just to make it work on its own terms and make sure that you've got that margin at the end of the day, but just that if you take your eye off the ball for a second, the consumer's got, you know, 3 or 4 other options, all within walking distance. Yeah,
and it doesn't take much for a consumer to turn around and go, fuck this, I'm gonna, you know, I didn't like the way the barista smiled at me today.
It can be a bad smile. It can be, you know, they put the cup down too hard when they gave it to me. They didn't. So, like, these are the things we've heard.
Wow.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Have you been noticing any food trends that are happening in Sydney that through Foodbyus? What can you talk about some of those?
100%. I mean, I think that as across the board, that the consumers are really telling the venues they go to, you know, these are now my dietary habits for a day, a week, a month, or a lifetime. You know, I'm now gluten intolerant, or I'm vegan, or I'm this, that, or the other. And so a lot of the trends that we see are these venues trying to, I guess, play catch up and have a rotating bunch of stuff that's going to meet what those consumers want. And so we see a lot of gluten-free stuff coming out, but people still want a treat. So one of the things we're seeing is, you know, it's like gluten-free donuts has become quite a big thing. And
vegan gluten-free donuts. Oh my goodness.
We couldn't believe it, because we had like what was originally like a niche supplier, and they're just like starting to take, you see it from our perspective, you just see a network of all these different buyers. And so we started seeing this, you know, the age of the vegan donut, and we had 2 or 3 suppliers that just started doing, you know, doubling their sales through Foodbyus every month. That's
so great.
So that's a trend. And then also this the raw, the paleo, the nut-free, all of that stuff. But by the way, none of this is healthy. I think that there's this idea that it might be healthy, and like it's all about
sugar laden, all of it.
Absolutely. It's just a treat with a different kind of
Look, Oreos are vegan too. That doesn't mean that they're healthy.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%.
It's the thing that really makes me laugh. Like, actually, this is a really great time to shout out to James from Shift Eatery in Surrey Hills. James is the reason we met. So I was speaking to James about coming on one of the panels, and was talking about we were looking for people to help us with regards to the food, and he said, you've got to speak to the guys from Foodbyus. And James has got an amazing little cafe in Surrey Hills.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, I used to work around the corner from him at Taste. Yeah, when it first opened. So Taste Begets, and the synchronicity was hilarious because Taste Begets provided the lunch for the 3 days, and you guys ended up doing all the morning teas and afternoon teas, which was fantastic. But Shift is a vegan cafe and full of sugar, full of soy. You know, those are not healthy things.
I know. And James actually sells a lot of that stuff, and we supply him a lot of stuff. I think what I love about James is he genuinely, like, he's into it. He cares. He's got a real ethos around that stuff. And I think, excuse me, I think he's kind of pushing it onto his customer base because he really, really cares about it, and in a good way. And then we also see like the flip side, which is venues that just know that they've got to keep up with that trend.
Yeah.
So they'll come to us and say, yo, what have you got that's gluten-free? Because I don't know what's gluten-free and I don't know what's vegan, but I know that some people out there want it. And all my life as a cafe owner, I've done, you know, sandwiches or non-vegan or non-whatever. You know, that's where they've come from. And in that way, we become like the consultants. But what's cool is we can talk to James about, because he's genuinely like
dude, he goes to protests. He wears the anonymous mask, and he goes and he stands in around St. James Station when they do all the protests, and he's one of the main protesters with the anonymous mask, and he's holding up signs, and he's hardcore. I'm a vegan as well. I'm a massive fan of what he's doing. But yeah, he's a rock star when it comes to that stuff, and he's staunch by it. He will not. He will. If you're a meat eater, he is going to challenge you for
he knows
days on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's well versed in it too, and he gets off on the whole conversation.
Yeah, because it's an educational thing, I guess.
Oh,
you know, he's done the research and he knows it's enlightening others. So, yeah.
And he's smashing it at his cafe.
Yeah, he's great. He's a really good operator. In fact, when we started doing that shift, you know, I said we sort of made the decision to move from homemade food into B2B. James is one of the people I sat down with and said, "Yo, what do you need as a cafe?"
Yeah, great.
And he's like, "Cool, can I give you some advice?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Your user interface is shit."
Yeah,
like,
good.
Oh yeah. He's like, "It's not built for cafe owners. It's built for consumers. Too many pretty pictures, too many words. You know, I just want to order the same stuff every day or close to it." And so we actually still got on the Foodbyus, like the company shared drive is about a 5-minute video of me videoing James trying to use our website as it then was, and just like ripping into it in a good way, in a constructive way.
That's awesome.
And I gave that to the web developers, and I gave that to the whole team. I was like, you need to look at this. You need to understand this customer. Every new staff member here ends up talking to James always, because we're around the corner from him, our offices. Always say, go talk to James. He'll explain, you know, how a cafe works and how we kind of fit into their business. Yeah,
he's the kind of guy he's not ashamed to be like, look, this doesn't work. I don't care how you flip it. He'll ring me up and he'll tell me, he's like, listen, Lee, there's something about my business model that's not working, and everyone keeps telling me that I should be doing something this way, but it just doesn't make sense. I'm going to change it. And I'm like, go you, man. Like I think we need more people like James in the industry. And if anyone in Sydney who's listening to this hasn't been to Shift Eatery, go check it out. His staff are awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're
Everyone there's
always
really
happy.
cool.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was so nice walking in there, and everyone's super excited to serve you and figure out what you want. And they're a little bit cheeky in the way that they give you feedback about certain things. It was really good. Shout out to his team as well, because Tony, the manager there, and her team, a couple of them came to our Map It Forward workshops as well, and they were just awesome.
Cool. Yeah.
So, with regards to Foodbyus, what's the goal? To grow it all over Australia?
Yeah, I think we're very early on in the journey. So still ironing out, I think, just a little bit on how we integrate into the cafe and restaurant owners' business in terms of, you know, the user experience and the kind of food that they want. Just early stage kinks. And then on the same side, we've got to do the same thing on the supply side. Just make sure when we're giving the supplier an order that it's, bless you, silent sneeze. Like you're miming it out.
I just sneezed for anyone who's listening to this on iTunes or Stitcher. I sneezed, but I muted first. And so Ben can see that I'm sneezing, but you couldn't hear me sneezing. And it's just, anyway, there we go. The silent sneeze again. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
All good. So, I mean, you know, the short answer of where we want to go, what we want to do, I think, is we want to be the easiest way for a food service venue to order. It's that simple. That's our vision. The easiest way for them to order. And when I say easy, you know, that can be broken down into a lot of moving parts. You know, it's not just about, oh, this is online and previously I had to phone. That's not really enough. It's got to be much easier. These people, these venues, they can get food without us. There's nothing stopping them. And they've been doing it for years, calling a supplier and getting food. The vision is that we are the one-stop shop, that we understand what they want even before they know that they want it. How do they reorder? How do they track things? How do they get invoiced? How do they run their payments? We just want to take the entire supply side headache away from them. And that is not just done by, hey, here's an online, you know, platform. It's so much better because it's online. That does not follow. It's about the entire experience. And how we integrate into suppliers is critical to that, because the suppliers need to know who the venue is and that it's a Foodbyus order, how they access that venue. You know, one thing we do is we have these digital lock boxes, which is essentially a key to that venue. But hidden on site behind a digital keypad, and inside you've got the key, and we can generate codes for that keypad. So our suppliers will be given a unique code to enter into someone like James's venue, and drop the milk right in the fridge, exactly as it's meant to be. And we do videos for all the venues, which go to the suppliers to say, hey, your dairy or your bread or your fruit veg, this is where in the venue you are supposed to put the food when you get there. Because we're
That's
not
outstanding.
Yeah, but that's the experience that James or someone like James wants. You know, they just want to order and come. You know, these guys are opening the venues at 5, 6 in the morning. They don't need bread that's crushed or milk that's warm or anything like that. And the vision is to get that experience right in Sydney, which we're very close to doing. We're certainly growing at a level which is, you know, sort of saying we're on the right track. Then I want to go Australia-wide. First thing is I want to build a profitable, good business. Like, we're not looking to exit or IPO or go public. It's not. I think if you build a business with that in mind, you're just setting yourself up for failure. You'll just always be raising money, and you're always sort of chasing growth and not necessarily what the customer wants. And then eventually it would be good to look overseas. But as I said, like, you know, if you take somewhere like America, I don't know how fragmented it is. How many suppliers are there? How many buyers are there? You know, is it more that there's, you know, just a few chains and just a few suppliers to those chains, and there's not much room for a Foodbyus? Or is it more like it is in Australia, where there's, you know, we're known here for not having that many chains, and there's a lot of independent operators on the supply and the buy side, and that makes us, you know, helpful to everyone. So there's that discovery part, I think, of what's going on in offshore markets. But yeah, we'll get there.
I think it's really exciting. I think that Like just when I think about from the perspective of a cafe and all the bookkeeping that they have to do with all the different suppliers that they have, if they have one invoice that they pay Foodbyus, the amount that saves them from an accounting perspective or a bookkeeping perspective it's astronomical, the amount of time they'd save.
Totally. And, you know, it really is not why they went into business.
No, it's not.
That's the thing. Is that it's not just the time save and it is all those things, and it's awesome. And even if they love paying invoices,
yeah, they didn't. I'll tell you that now.
But it's not. It's like the most hated part of the business, you know.
Oh, I know. I absolutely know from my own experience with having a ready-to-go beverage. It's, you know, I enjoy numbers. It was one of my favorite things as a kid, but bookkeeping just seems like vampiristic. It just sucks the life out of you.
Yeah, yeah. It's just not the fun part of running your business, unfortunately.
No.
It's like a necessary evil. So yeah, if someone can take that away or help you do it, right?
Oh, it's a massive added bonus from where I can see. Like I was just, when I heard about your business model and I heard James talk to me about it, and then I spoke with Beth, who's no longer with you guys, right?
Yeah, Beth came and got poached right under our nose by a US company entering into Australia, and they just raised like $154 million or some crazy amount, and they came into Australia, and they actually took a guy from Uber, a local Uber Australia employee, and they put him at the top of the Australian operation, and then went around and recruited the best people they could find, which apparently was
one of your employees.
What can you do? I mean, that's
what kind of business are they opening?
It's a corporate travel booking. It's kind of like Kayak, but for corporates, so that their staff can go in and, you know, you might be able to book a flight or whatever from within your company, but you can see all the options and save a bit of money, and then they give you as an employee a bit of credit. It's quite a cool model, actually.
Yeah, awesome. You would have. Beth is awesome.
Beth's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to Beth if she ever hears this. But it was, you know, the way that she was describing the business model to me and all of that. It was just, I think it's such a great help to people in Sydney, and hopefully very soon it'll be something that's available to everybody in Australia. Just because running cafes and restaurants is really hard, no matter where you are in the world, and it's becoming harder. So if they even just get a little bit of time back and a little bit of peace of mind, which feels like they're going to get a lot more than a little bit back using Foodbyus. But kudos to what you're doing, Ben. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah. It's just the beginning as well. Like it's the more we venture into it, the more we're sort of like, wow, there's a lot that needs solving here. So
are you enjoying it?
Venue, yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. It's great because there's a lot of technology behind what we do, and that's great. And I do really like the innovative side of that. But at the end of the day, it's very real world. Like things like venue access and trucks and logistics and keys, or things like the making of food, the ordering of food, the perishability of where it all needs to get stored. Like it's quite real. And so we're kind of dealing with these genuine operational issues, which I really like as well. Like that's kind of more, I guess, my background, like the shoes and all that. So and the other thing is I really like, genuinely at my core, like I empathize so much with the venues that we're servicing, because I've run a small business, and, you know, I spent like 5 years just smashing my head against the wall trying to get this shoe empire running, and dealing with cash flow and dealing with supply and dealing with all things that can go wrong, even though it's shoes and not food. Like I just totally get the struggle. And it's good, like, to be able, I guess, to help
and contribute to fixing the problem rather than creating another hurdle for business owners, because there's just so many of them.
Yeah.
Well, Ben, I don't want to be disrespectful of your time at all, so I want to make sure that we finish on time. Thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, and best of luck with Foodbyus. And I hope that we see you next year when we do Mapper Forward in Sydney again. Maybe you'll be in Melbourne by the time we do that as well.
That would be good. That would be a great thing. We can do Melbourne. We can do a sponsorship with all the food again.
Yeah, we were talking about all the wins that we had, you know, and what were some of the things that we took away from this that we want to do again. And hands down, everybody said, how great was it working with Foodbyus? They're such great people. And so we were like, let's hope we can do this again next year. So
thank you.
We're there. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
Perfect. Thank you for your time, Ben, and we'll speak to you soon.
All right. Thank you, Lee.
See you later.